You're listening to the Weekend Sport Podcast with Jason Pine from News Talk ZB.
Well, the London Irish Rugby Club have been suspended from the Premiership after missing a deadline to pay their players and their staff. The club were given until Tuesday of the week past to complete a takeover or risk being suspended. They'll now not be able to play in any league next season. A US consortium had been trying to buy London Irish, but a statement from the Rugby Football Union said that takeover had not come to pass. This news follows the demise earlier this season of fellow Premiership rugby clubs Worcester and Wasps. Christian Day played top-level rugby for 15 years with the Sale Sharks, Stade Francais and Northampton. He is now the General Secretary of the Rugby Players Association, and he joins us. Christian, thanks for coming on the radio with us and giving us the background to this. Can you start perhaps with the timeline of events that led to the suspension of London Irish?
Yeah, I mean, the takeover has been under discussion for some time. It was probably kind of in February time that rumours started surfacing that the current owner wanted to move on, and there was this American consortium looking to buy the club, but unfortunately, that never materialised into anything concrete. And for us, warning signs always come as soon as people aren't being paid on time. Last month, we had, issues around pay that we managed to resolve. But sure enough, this month, the same thing happened again. And ultimately, a lot of promises were broken. And unfortunately, the players, the staff and the fans are the ones who suffer.
London Irish had a really solid season on the pitch, didn't they? They were fifth and made the final of the Premiership Rugby Cup for the second successive season, so they were going well on the grass. Christian, how did this happen?
Yeah, in many ways, one of the most exciting clubs in the Premiership, a very talented young squad, and as you said, they were heading in the right direction performance-wise. Ultimately, the club was not a business that made money, and I'll be frank, not many sports teams in England do make money. Sports in this country is all about kind of the love and the passion for the game. So their owner, unfortunately, felt that after the length of time he's been involved, that he wanted to step away, and unfortunately, a consortium, approached and made out that they were the real deal. They wanted to buy the club, and unfortunately, they weren't. And, it all tracks back to COVID and the lockdowns, the damage that it's done to the financial system of the game. And we all knew that was going to be tough. But I think we're now getting to the realities of how tough that's going to be.
Did the proposed takeover by this US consortium did it ever feel likely to you?
Well, you've got to take people at their word, I think. I hope people think of me as someone who's got some integrity, and if I say something, it's because I believe it's true. And I think the players and the staff felt that about the ownership at London Irish, and they were told that this was the real deal. I mean, I've got to say, from my opinion, we never really knew who the buyers were. There were countless promises about money being transferred that never materialised. And I think, fool me once and I'm the fool, but fool me twice. Yeah, it was just a catalogue of missed promises, broken promises. And retrospectively looking at it, I think it probably was allowed to continue for too long.
Well, you mentioned before that there aren't a lot of sporting teams in the UK that are making money, and clearly costs are high. In particular, I'd imagine paying the players. So are big wage bills part of the problem here?
Well, ultimately, it's costs, isn't it? I think the one element of cost that's actually controlled in the Premiership is player salaries via a salary cap. I think everyone understands that currently the finances in the game are not rich, and everyone needs to think about how we manage that. I guess from my perspective, representing the players, is all I would say is there are a lot of costs that aren't associated with direct player wages, and we have to ensure that everything is being managed, not just simply the costs of wages, player wages, because just across the channel from us, we have a vibrant French league where money is flowing. And the Japanese market as well is starting to become very, very attractive to players. And what we don't want is a drain of talent leaving the country, leaving the league, because ultimately that will impact not just on the league, but also on the international game. And we don't want that to happen. There's a certain amount, again, I'll come back to the English sporting market. We have the Premier League football in this country, and we're used to the best players wanting to play in this country. I think, turn the clock back 5 years, I think rugby was the same. We had some of the world's biggest stars coming to play in England, and we need to work out how we get the English Premiership back to that position, because I think if we're being honest, we're not in that position at the moment.
All right, well, let's then look ahead and think about some possible solutions here. If you've got a blank sheet of paper in front of you, Christian, and you're looking to put things down on that piece of paper to help restore rugby in England to what it was before, what sort of things are you writing down?
So look, action's taking place as we speak. So again, as the players' representatives, we've got a real push. There's an agreement in the game that manages the professional game. It's up next year. And we're making a real push that for the first time, the players should be recognised collectively as partners in that agreement. It's something that I have a big belief in. I know in Australian and New Zealand sports, there are these kind of collective agreements. So that's one step. Obviously, I've spoken about financial viability. League is already actioning a lot more controls. In the French league, there's something called the DANAC, where at the start of the season, you have to show that you have funds available to cover all the wages and everything for the season. Look, there's a lot of work going on. I think we need to recognise that in the current environment is not a time to splash the cash. It's a time to draw in the purse strings a little bit. But at the same time, we've got to have a plan for the future. And like I said, for us, a 5-year plan that we get the Premiership back to where it was as one of the most attractive environments, I think is something that we need to put in place.
So back to London Irish then, a number of players and staff and their families affected by this. So how is the RPA, doing its best to help support those players who have been affected by this?
Yeah, so it's unfortunate to say it, but we've had experience this year with Wasps and Worcester where, if we're being frank, and it was before I came into this role, we weren't prepared for that level of kind of disaster, particularly not one happening straight after the other. So this time, at least, we were slightly better prepared. It's never good news. Losing your job, losing the club that you love is never going to be good news, but at least we had support available, learning from those two other clubs. So primarily, we had strong legal advice for the players around their contracts, that once the club was suspended, if another club wanted to come in to get them, they could leave straight away. And that was a learning from the Worcester failure in particular, where the players were effectively handcuffed to a failing club. We've managed to establish a hardship fund. So when I was elected to this role in February, one thing I said we had to get was a benevolent fund. There was a hardship fund for players who fall on hard times. We've managed to get that. It's for players and staff at London Irish. So anyone experiencing hardship can draw down on that fund on a means-tested basis. And then the third thing is trying to promote player mobility. So we launched a free agents list this year. Again, it wasn't meant to be for failing clubs. It was simply meant to be for players who were out of contract. But we've used it successfully for Wasps and Worcester, and we'll launch that again now for London Irish players to make sure that heads of recruitment are fully aware of who's available. The players will all have agents. But we think if we can send that to all the heads of recruitment around the league, and not just in the Premier League, but in the Championship with Great Britain Sevens, we need to try and find landing spots for as many of these guys as possible. So at the end of the day, they're professional players. They likely can't just go into a normal job. They have to go into a market which is already saturated because of the failings at Wasps and Worcester. And because of the time of year, most clubs have already finished their recruitment. So we're doing everything we can to help. We have mental health support and we have individual development support. But like I said, it's not going to be a good situation no matter how much we help. And for me, the important thing is we need to put the things in place to try and make sure this doesn't happen again.
Yeah, just such a tough time for so many top players. I know a couple of years ago, Christian, there were talks about expanding the top division to 14 teams. Is it now more likely, though, with the demise of London Irish along with Worcester and Wasp, that this might look like a 10-team premiership next season?
Yeah, it certainly does look like we're moving towards 10. I don't think that was the plan. I'll be perfectly honest. I think, like you say, the plan was expansion, but I think we've arrived at 10. Bizarrely, a 10-team league solves some problems particularly in terms of that international crossover, which I know in New Zealand you don't really have. But for our game, Premiership games playing on international weekends were always contentious because the best players aren't playing in the league. And it also solves some problems around player loading. I think most people agree that we're probably playing a little bit too much rugby. So in that way, if we can move to a model where, okay, we've got less games, but let's make them a bigger spectacle. Let's make sure the best players are playing. Let's market them right. Because some of the clubs in the Premiership are very successful. With teams like Leicester Tigers have 20,000 people watching every week. Bristol Bears have got big crowds watching. It's the product on the pitch is pretty good at the moment. We've just got to try and make sure that everything off field is modernised to match, really. That's where this new partnership between the league, the union, and the players, I really do think it will have legs. And hopefully we can get rugby back on track in this country.
Yeah, let's hope so. And what now for London Irish, Christian? Do they still exist as a rugby club?
They do currently. The ownership has actually filed for, the word is, well, not the bankruptcy, but they filed to administer the club. That's what it is. So another buyer could come in at this stage and purchase the club. They've obviously lost their license in the Premiership for the next year. But there's a lot of rumours around this Phoenix club arrangement. So if a new buyer did come in, they would re-enter the Championship. So one tier down rather than dropping to the bottom. And one thing that is in big discussion at the moment is we need to produce a better second tier of rugby. Rugby in England is big. We have a lot of players. We have a lot of talented young players. We are serially in the finals of under-20s World Cups, and there's a lot of talent there. They're probably just not playing enough rugby. So if we can produce a better second tier, we're going to have more playing opportunities for those young players, and hopefully we can, reinvigorate a player pathway, which probably at the moment isn't quite functioning as well as the amount of talent there is. So the Championship plays a big part. And I think, again, I'll come back to this partnership idea. We need to work out how the Championship too is involved in them.
Well, it sounds as though you've got the right attitude in terms of looking forward, Christian, and working out how to, as you say, avoid this happening again. It's been such a disruptive, several months for the players and the fans and the families of those at Worcester and Wasps, and now at London Irish as well. Look, I appreciate you taking the time for a chat. I wish it was under better circumstances. I hope we can catch up again down the track when things are a little bit brighter. But thanks for joining us today.
No problem. Hopefully we can speak again when times are a bit better.
Yeah, let's hope so. Thanks, Christian. Christian Day there, the General Secretary of the Rugby Players Association in England.
For more from Weekend Sport with Jason Pine, listen live to News Talk ZB weekends from midday or follow the podcast on iHeartRadio.